going to say professional services pathway to success. It's about managing email threats with Barracuda. Now, we all know that, you know, email threats are of significant impact in terms of getting ransomware infections and so forth. So we felt this was a really important one for today. And with that, we'll advance to the next slide. Just a little bit about NSA for folks that may be a little less familiar with ourselves. We're a Microsoft Silver partner. We acquired a company called Management Concepts about 1.5 years ago, and Glenn is from that acquisition, who will be doing our presentation today. It added significant strength in our security space when we acquired them. So our security practice has really grown out and been built out by quite a bit, and Barracuda is one really good example of that. Our focus is 100% on implementing distribution clients for ERP, and our clients are very broad range, anywhere from 10 users to 2,500 users, both privately and publicly traded companies. We were the first organization in Infor's SXC ERP space to get the Alliance Partnership designation, which allows us to support you know, any Infor direct client, as well as those that we grow organically on our own. And we also have the largest staff of business consultants in the space. So we've got 15 plus, and that continues to grow all the time, with significant experience among that team in the distribution space, 22 plus years on average. We'll advance it one more. So our web presenter today is Glenn Bell. So Glenn brings over 20 years of experience in this particular space. He has been working with a variety of different companies over all that time. And you know, we're pleased that he's able to do the presentation today with us with Barracuda. And with that, Glenn, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate you joining our session. Today, we're going to go through a brief discussion on key threats, and I want to kind of focus in on specific ones that we've kind of encountered along the way, challenges we've seen, sort of real-world problems, right? Things that we actually see and are involved with. There's many esoteric types of hacks out in the world, and not all of them land on our doorstep. And I guess I want to be clear that the ones we're talking about today are ones we've seen and been involved with, either helping with or cleaning up or preventing. So with that, of course, the goal is to prevent these things from happening and prevent the challenges from landing on our doorstep. So we'll move into how NSA can help with Barracuda and how we can help deal with those challenges. And then in the end, we'll do a little brief Q&A following in chat. So most attacks these days do start with an email. The threat landscape has definitely changed, with email driving most of the attacks we face now. We used to have a pretty broad spectrum of vectors for how things became infected, and while that remains true, there's no question that email is the driving force right now behind most types of attacks that hit our networks. SANS Institute, it's been a leading security resource for over 30 years. I've read their articles for the duration of my career, and I find them to be a very good and trusted resource. They make this comment that almost 3/4 of all attacks start with an email, an attachment, or a link. Gartner, another respected resource, a research resource since 1979, they make the comment that business email compromise attacks increased by nearly 100% in 2019 and resulted in substantial financial losses in some cases. You know, 2020, 2021, this has just gone up and up, and we'll see some statistics on that, but there's just no question that this is sharply on the rise. With that, we'll move to some key threats. There's 13 top email threats in 2021. Again, our focus is going to be on just a few. particularly phishing and spearfishing. We'll talk about the differences between the two. They're primarily a delivery mechanism. Malware and ransomware, with ransomware being the most common right now of all the malware, and Office 365. You really can't have a conversation about mail flow anymore without talking about Office 365. As of April of 2020, there's over 258 million users of Office 365, with 43% of the users in the United States. So with that, we're going to talk about phishing. Phishing attacks are an email-based manipulation, right? They start where a message arrives with you or one of your end users, and it pretends to be a trusted site, like a banking, credit card site, a retirement or payroll site. But they really take our end user or ourselves to a fake site to deliver either malware or to try to get a hold of your login information. The goal is to get coin, right? To get paid. Identity theft is its own challenge, and its goal is getting paid also, but it has an impact to people in some ways that goes beyond dollars and cents. So hard to clean up, so hard to restore people's situations after they've had those problems. Phishing attacks, though, can lead to more personal attacks. And that's where we get to spearfishing. Spearfishing typically follows a successful phishing attack on one of your end users, or perhaps you, a trusted coworker. It's more personal because they've often watched your mail flow at this point and know a little bit more about you and your organization. The goal, again, is getting paid. Real world impact, we've definitely seen situations with this. It's come up. We encourage the use of multi-factor as a result of the evolution of these problems. It was at one time that wasn't as frequent a used solution, but with Office 365, it's an absolute must. Office 365 in general has some unique threats related to account takeovers as well, and I'll walk you through that process now. Office 365 account takeovers kind of flow like this. Attacker has the credentials, right, from a successful phishing attack. The attacker observes a mail flow and defines what they want to try to exploit. They observe and watch mail, and it's literally a person doing this typically, and they can see the traffic between financial sites and that type of thing. The attacker creates rules in your web-based mail portal typically, and I'll say that the mail portal has a distinction between that and an installed Outlook client, for example. So the rules that you see in the web-based portal are often server-based rules and not necessarily visible to you in your Outlook. So it's specific to being seen in your Outlook web portal. The attacker then moves mail to a seldom used mailbox folder like RSS feeds. It's the one I've seen the most often. An RSS feeds folder is a legacy folder from days gone by. About 20 years ago, there used to be a lot of news feeds and things like that. I'm sure the process still exists, but it's not used by very many people. Some applications, though, have ties into that, and that folder remains in an Office 365 or Outlook folder layout. And what the attacker does is marks the messages as read so that you can't see these messages and moves them into that folder. The attacker then emails the target that they've selected with your identity, and they can carry on a conversation to their, to whatever means they choose. And you won't see this mail flow at all. So again, we stress and recommend using multi-factor authentication to help with this. This is just a screenshot in web-based email at office.com. If you log in, you can go to the gear in your upper right-hand corner and you can view all Outlook settings. It's down at the bottom. And from there, you'll be able to see the rules area here. So if you take a look at that, and if you go and look and just see if you see a list of rules that are rules that you did not create, that you don't know what they are, you'll want to disable those immediately, change your passwords, kill off sessions, and if you haven't been using multi-factor, you want to enable that. Reach out if you need assistance from your admin or from us, but that's an important set of steps. One last comment on spearfishing. Small and mid-sized companies aren't immune. Absolutely true. 43% of targeted spearfishing attacks were directed to businesses with less than 250 employees. That comment made by Symantec, an antivirus company. all kinds of news headlines out there, right? We see them all the time over the decades, but increasingly so for sure, right? I mean, the Colonial Pipeline attack in Georgia recently, May 7th, they're one of the largest pipeline operators in the United States. They provide 45% of the East Coast fuel. They ended up paying $5 million in ransom via Bitcoin, and they still ended up restoring everything. It left many people out gas at the pumps, and that qualifies as real world problems, I think. Kaseya attack also very big in the news, affected a great deal of companies. When we look at the news items just randomly on this page, the one that interests me the most is the top one. 93% of phishing emails are now ransomware, right? That's not 93% of emails, that's 93% of phishing emails are now ransomware. And if you were to Google this out, I think you're not going to find a statistic that comes in much less than 90%, certainly many more than this. But ransomware is the #1 challenge right now, brought to us by phishing attacks, like I mentioned. With that said, ransomware, it's a good segue, and we'll talk about ransomware. So ransomware is one of the most common forms of malware. It often comes in the form of an encryption attack, and it typically is delivered by a phishing message, like I mentioned. Brings the victim to a fake site. The infection then searches for and encrypts data on the PC and network servers. Basically, when you get to a fake site, you can deliver malicious payload. There's a lot of different approaches that can happen at that point via that phishing message that can lead to this type of encryption attack. But commonly, just by obtaining credentials or delivering a malicious payload, and then there's paths that they can take with that. So the infection then searches for and encrypts data on the PC and network servers, and it prevents access to data and servers, right? So basically, those things become unavailable to you and your network. The attackers leave information behind, giving the victim information on how to contact them and pay, right? Again, always going for coin. And basically, with this type of problem, there's very little legal or political recourse in the world. There's even call centers in other countries. They're basically left to do this with impunity. And their goal is to help you pay them. And they will do that with full support with people in cubes sitting at a call center. Basic examples of that, we've helped companies in the past. We did have a client in the past that had virtually all of their servers encrypted. It took days to get out. Fortunately, they had a rock solid, backup strategy, and that was useful in being able to get them out of that situation. But a lot of downtime, and it's not a process that anybody wants to go through. This is just a picture, a little screenshot of what it looks like to have an encrypted file system. It can present in a lot of different ways, but basically, it's just what you see in your list of files. The file extensions are changed. The information becomes garbage to you without an encryption key to be able to release this data. I mentioned attackers leave information behind. It's often in the form of a notepad. This is just a sample of that. So that notepad document or pop-ups in different ways that the attackers leave to help inform an admin or the people that are affected, to give them information to basically help them go through the process of paying them in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is just a currency that's less trackable, but it's very complex. So they explain it to you at that call center and help you pay them. This is a breakdown of ransomware, and it's an attack list sort of by industry. And what I find interesting about this is, who really is being targeted and who isn't, right? So corporations are not necessarily a surprise. They have the means, they have the money, they're a rich target, and that's understandable. Municipalities, smaller municipalities don't necessarily have a lot of resources, and we've worked with some in the past, and we've certainly recognized that they don't have the resources that many corporations do, quite frankly. So no surprise there that they're kind of pretty high up in that percentage list too. But if you look at this, what is, might come as a bit of surprise is the financial market at 3%. Why is that, right? I mean, they've been dealing with these issues for years, right? They've got budgets and they have intense IT setups to try to thwart this stuff, and they've become more and more effective over time. So I think it's interesting that the financial market is actually the least exploited here. It's more the corporations that are dealing with banking information that has the challenge. So how can NSA help with Barracuda? I'll go on and talk a little bit about some of the services by Barracuda that can help with these challenges. Barracuda is a best-in-class cloud-based service. Geographical data centers, which is just table stakes anymore, right? Office 365, any number of different cloud-based services you use, they have to have widespread data centers that replicate their data amongst them to be fault tolerant and to protect your stuff. Rest assured, Barracuda certainly does as well. Bidirectional protection. When we're talking about preventing these challenges from landing, on your network and in your mail system, it's not just one way. So it's not just filtering that traffic inbound to your mail servers or to your mail system. It's bidirectional. So it's there to protect other people from you, frankly, and also protect your reputation. So your outbound mail flow is screened as well in case you do get an infection or some type of problem. It's there to help protect your reputation. Compliance and data protection against today's email threats. Well, most of our users use, most of the people that we have on Barracuda, there's a couple of very popular examples of what they use for data compliance. And those are preventing credit card information or social security information or numbers from leaving their network and their mail flow. So it's a very easy thing to set that up and to prevent that kind of traffic from leaving your network. It's an easy thing for people to forget and copy paste something and not aware that it's including that information, and this is there to safeguard that traffic outbound. Over 200,000 global customers used Barracuda right now, and you're going to be seeing some examples of that later on of some of the people that have trusted Barracuda to protect their systems. So one of the big differences that I find with Barracuda is the multi-layered approach. It's what I like about them best. They really bring together a whole suite of different products and solutions to protect your data and bring a whole lot of great features along with it. But we'll talk about some of the systems involved in protecting your mail. So it's at a gateway level. That means it filters before it arrives at your mail system. And it pulls together a whole suite of different services, like their Barracuda Reputation Block List, which is updated in real time, real-time threat system, a set of advanced technologies that enables the gateway to block the latest viruses, spyware, and other malware attacks in real time. Advanced Threat Protection, ATP, another solution they employ. They don't have just one tool in the shed when it comes to viral loads and malware. And it works in conjunction with DNS technologies, and I'll throw a few techie terms here a little bit. SPF, DMARC, and DKIM. For those on board that are aware of some of that technology, it works seamlessly with those services and with those DNS processes. Barracuda is also user aware, and it integrates with the on-premise Active Directory or Azure AD. It's just a way of saying that Barracuda knows who the users are and who they're supposed to be. So I mentioned a little earlier, there is a whole suite of different products that come to bear to help protect your systems. One of the best that I've seen for dealing specifically with phishing messages and Office 365 technologies and things related to account takeover and that type of thing is Sentinel. It uses AI insight into your mail flow. It actually, when we install it, it goes through and scours and looks through the database. It looks at patterns between systems, and it goes through and looks to see connections from different locations, who's connecting at different times, that kind of thing, looks at mail patterns and so forth. With that said, it uses the past knowledge that it has to protect against the future. Multi-layered approach again, not any system is 100% perfect. So with that said, Phishing is a training component that's involved with Barracuda that's increasingly and improving, and it acts to basically educate your end users against simulated email threats. It will create essentially false or fake phishing messages and help train and go out amongst the end users to see sort of who clicks on what manipulations have worked against your end users. And it reports that information back just so you're aware of who might need a little bit more education. That process then does do the education by going through and informing the end users on different approaches to be safer with mail flow. Another thing with Barracuda that I appreciate is a great portal interface. It's definitely a, one of the strengths that I find with it, and it has to do with the way that the message log viewer works. So I found that this system is very easy at allowing you to interact specifically with messages as they've come in and know what to do when you have a message that's arrived, if you need to recategorize or make any change. For admin types, it's excellent at being able to report on what technologies have done what since the inception of the system. So the portal interface to me is, I find to be one of its great strengths. So feature rich is very important. It's not all about just blocking and protecting our data flow. I will ask if we have any new members joining, if they would just go ahead and mute their session here today. That would be helpful, and thank you. So feature rich, yeah, mail spooling. So I've been involved with Exchange and mail flow systems for over 20 years. I've worked with every version of on-premise Exchange really since inception. And this feature used to be something that I pretty much talked about exclusively related to on-premise systems. So what mail spooling does is it will capture all the mail that comes inbound. If your mail system goes down, it'll continue to receive that mail. When your system comes back up, it will start flowing that right directly back into your mail system without having missed a beat, essentially. So, really over time, on-premise systems, as far as Exchange databases, things like that, the repairs on them as those databases have grown take longer and longer to repair and longer to resolve the issues with. So having something that backs you up is very important. The reason that I mentioned that I used to just only refer to this in regards to an on-premise system is that Office 365, as little as a few months ago, even though it's 99.99% uptime and all the rest of that, did have an outage for 3 to 4 hours during the middle of the week, during the day. Mail flow is interrupted. For people with Barracuda, that mail is allowed to spool and then return back to the system. Email encryption, that's another kind of an on-premise challenge for many people if you have an on-premise mail system. So that's usually a bolt-on product or an add-on, or more often than not, its configuration is challenging and just simply not done. So people live without that feature. Office 365 has email encryption, of course, but it's licensed individual. So you pay additionally for each user that uses that service, which often reduces the amount of people that a company has using that service. With Barracuda, that's included for all users. So everyone on board can use email encryption if needed. Cloud-to-cloud backups? Well, let's start with something right there. In Office 365, for example, there really aren't any. So your data, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams data, email, all the rest of it, there aren't natural backups in the Office 365 ecosystem by default. So you don't have any backups on that system. Yes, you can, restore a deleted message for a limited period of time, and there's a couple of things you can do, but it's very independent of a process like having full cloud-based backups. Barracuda does provide these. It's a cloud-based backup that's independent, completely separate of your Office 365 environment. And so with that said, some of the challenges or calls that I've often gotten in the past are kind of the common one is the CEO is deleted a folder or something from the past in their mail system, and now the admin is sort of left scrambling trying to find that data. Oftentimes it's not deleted, it's just dragged and dropped into another folder, nested somewhere where nobody can find it. So just as a simple feature there, restoring a folder from the past, there's unlimited backup points, so you can go back as far as you need to find that and just simply recover that data. Back to ransomware and all the rest, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams data, it's all backed up independent with infinite restore points. One other feature that's loved by some of us staff in our company for sure is cloud-based email archiving. Got to say, in Outlook, doing a search, for regular messages using Microsoft search capability, I would say it's pretty limited. I think many of you may have had challenges in the past trying to find messages. Cloud-based email archiving is a wonderful service. It's included and provides unlimited storage and access from all devices, right? So your handhelds, doesn't matter, iOS, whatever, tablets, PC, ties into your Outlook, all the rest of that. You can do detailed searches, and it's useful for company goals as well, like legal holds and all the rest of that. It's a full-featured email archiving service. So best-in-class support, this is something that I really do enjoy about Barracuda. It's 24/7, and it's communicate how you want to, so live chat, email, and phone. There's no phone trees. When you make a call, you'll get straight to to a person that will direct you to the specific technology that you're calling about. Your next step is talking to that person, and that's the person who's helping you work on the problem. Over the years, I've had many occasions to involve their support, and have certainly found it quite responsive. So going the extra mile, I seldom wait more than a few minutes. So over 200,000 global clients, as I mentioned. A lot of names on here that I think you'll recognize, and ideally, some of these names will bring confidence in terms of others that are using Barracuda to protect their systems. So there's one kind of comment I've left back here because it's just started coming up recently, and that's cyber liability insurance, right? This used to be quite a cash cow, as I understand it, from an insurance company point of view. Headlines abound for decades, right, as mentioned before, and such was the sort of the fear created, I guess you'd say, at that point. And the amount of truly hacked systems with payouts was low in comparison. So a lot of money was made even in as little as 2017. And I guess this has changed dramatically so that now insurance companies are finding a tough time trying to break even on this type of insurance. Increased payouts for ransomware, has driven demand up and the increase in ransomware in general. And it's become emboldened, obviously. You've seen some of the payouts that have been involved in things you've read in the news. So basically what's happening now is there's a bit of a change in process happening where they might have been insuring in the past based on the law of averages. They're now challenging your network or challenging you as a person to offer insurance to basically verify and to push back and say, hey, we want to know a bit about your systems before we go ahead and do this. And they want to know where you're at as far as your systems goes, right? So do you pre-screen your emails for potentially malicious attachments and links? That's a direct question off of one of their forms, by the way. Do you provide a quarantine service to your end users? And many network questions about your operating systems, the levels of the operating system, whether or not it's a current operating system, whether they're up to date, and details about your backup strategies. These are all parts of the puzzle for them now in offering this insurance. So what I want to say is, I guess, I want to be clear that NSA can help. As Brian mentioned at the front end of this, we're full network services here at NSA. So we're involved in enhanced firewalling and antivirus solutions, multi-factor protected VPN solutions. We're detailed in terms of switching and all the rest. We even offer managed services and proactive assistance and monitoring of your systems if you choose, Wi-Fi assistance, the list goes on. So you're likely to receive a mailer or two down the road, and we'd encourage you to look at that. And if that's not the way that you've seen us in the past at NSA, we certainly encourage you to reach out because we can help. So with that said, I'd like to turn this back over to Brian. Oh, and actually, before we do that, let's get to our special offer. So today, I will mention, I will offer that I can do a no-risk discovery call. And if you're interested in these services, we can help review the type of systems you have and see what kind of fit there is with this type of service. Certainly, I can go through that with no commitment and no charge and help see if these services are ideal for you. Attendees of this webinar will also receive a 10% discount on setup and installation, and that offer is valid for 30 days from presentation, with basically completion being looked at within the calendar year. So I'll thank you again. I appreciate your joining us here today, and I'll turn this over for questions with Brian.
Great, Glenn. Thank you so much for that. I would invite people to please enter any questions they have into the chat box, and we'll wait a couple of moments here and see what kind of questions we get. All right, Glenn, I've got a couple that are coming through. One question is, how is Barracuda priced and how does it scale?
Barracuda, like Office 365 in that regard, is licensed per user. So there's kind of an a la carte option, and there's a bundled services, and that's part of that discovery call. I can certainly help pin that together. But what's nice about it is that it follows your user base, right? So if you have expansion or contraction, your costs scale with it.
Great. Another question I have is the support that you mentioned included, or is it an additional contract?
No, Barracuda support is definitely included in it for the duration of your licenses. So as long as you're using their service, that's available to you. And as I mentioned, their service is spectacular.
Third question I have is, some of the systems you mentioned are unlimited data. Are there any limits like bandwidth used or anything else?
No. So storage, as you point out, and as I pointed out earlier, is unlimited. So there is no sort of fluctuating costs involved in the service beyond its just regular licensing fee, and there is no bandwidth type. So there's, and some security services do work that way, right? So they do kind of measure, some DNS-based services and other services do measure the amount of traffic involved from your network to them, and as part of their billing cycle. But that's not the issue here. This is no surprises. It's straight up.
Okay. And we'll wait another minute or so, see if there's any other questions that come in. Those are the ones I had so far. And while we're waiting on those questions to come in, I'll just remind people, especially a couple that joined late, today's session is being recorded, and we will be sending out that recorded link to you within a couple of business days of the results of this particular webinar. Keep in mind, please, Glenn's offer for a review of your existing systems to see where vulnerabilities may exist. And again, if this is something that you're interested in, there is that 10% discount off of your implementation services within 30 days of this particular webinar. Okay, Glenn, I think that's a wrap for today. I want to thank everybody for attending today's session, and please look for your email, which will have the recorded link in it, along with another mention of the promotion that we're holding. And we certainly hope to see you guys soon again at our future webinars that are coming your way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.